Breaking news, Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison in the case involving sex workers, violence, and freak-offs. Right now, let's talk about this because this is brand new news, breaking news. I'm pulling up everything we can find to find out the details about that sentence, Michael, because the reality is we don't know exactly what that means, how much time would actually be served. But here's what the AP is reporting, is that yes, he's been sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison, and that the judge said a lengthy sentence was needed for deterrence, and that he was unconvinced that if Combs is released, these crimes won't happen again.
Yeah, the judge also said that a history of good works cannot erase the power and control that you had over the women and you profess to love dearly. You abused them physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and you used that to get your way. And at the end of the day, those are the words that I think really is under control. We're looking actually at a live shot of that courthouse right now, folks just sort of milling around. And it's interesting because we're talking about the recommendation made by the Department of Probation was anywhere from 70 to 87 months. So the judge actually went below that with 50 months, and we're still trying to figure out if he has to serve that 50 months or, under federal guidelines, 85% is what you have to serve before becoming eligible for parole, which is about 3.5 years under the circumstances, which he's already served about a year and about a half almost.
Right, and the prosecutors wanted an 11-year sentence. Let's bring in Marlo Greer. Marlo, I want to say this too. We now know that Sean Diddy Combs, we expected to make a statement to the court, and here is what he said in part. He called his past behavior disgusting, shameful, and sick, while apologizing to the people he hurt physically and mentally, as well as his children in the audience. He said his acts of domestic violence are a burden he will have to carry for the rest of his life. Clearly, that didn't resonate enough with the judge to give him what he had requested.
It didn't, but one of the things that I read is that the judge said his sentence was meant to show that abusers and victims, that these crimes will have real accountability. And I really question, is the sentence real accountability? It was on earlier today, and I talked about how I believe that sex crimes steal somebody's soul. And the victims have to live with this for the rest of their lives. So is 50 months real accountability? Is it a message? Or is it, hey, that's not much?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised.
Yeah.
I thought, at the very least, he would go within the guidelines and give him somewhere between 70 and 87 months. I didn't think at any point he would go up to that 11 years that prosecution was asking for. Understandable, they would want that based on this whole, with the victims and the things that they went through. One of the questions I had for you earlier, Marlo, was the defense was arguing that, look, you have to sentence him on the charges and the convictions that he had, not all this other stuff, the abuse and all that. He wasn't necessarily convicted of that. The judge in his statement said that in fact he did consider that.
He did consider the treatment of the women in his life, and he did consider the power and control. You tell me what your thoughts are on whether or not you think that this is an appealable issue, that he talked about the women. I think that he can consider all of the information without specifically sentencing him on that crime. I think there's a difference between considering all factors. Obviously, he considered the factors of what Diddy presented in his video. So what's your take on, do you think it's appealable?
Well, I was just going to say, Michael, I think that it is something that he has to be very clear in all of his findings of facts, conclusions of law, and the order that he issues with the sentence. I do not think he can rely on that evidence, but I mean, that can't be the sole reason. I do think he can consider it in determining who is the person of Sean Diddy that he has to sentence for this crime.
Yeah, I think he's well within his rights here. He's within the guidelines for that particular crime. There are some precedents saying that normally it's less than that, but he was firmly within the guidelines under these circumstances, and judges have great deference when they're delivering these types of things. And, you know, again, as long as you put on the record the reasons that you make, I think you're allowed to consider the totality of the circumstances.
But I really feel, I'm surprised. I just want to get quickly, we have about 10 seconds. Surprised or not by the judge's sentence?
Surprised.
Me too. I thought it would be longer. I
thought it would be longer, certainly not 11, but longer for sure.
Yep. All right.